Alright, morning folks. Here we are taking a look at the most controversial life sentences of all time. Alright. Let's take a gander, y'all. And here we go.
Incarceration for your natural life.
If not now the death penalty, then when?
He's gonna go to hell, and that's where he belongs.
Sheriff, get the defendant out of my courtroom, please. Thank you.
He killed my baby, and she was so dumb. She loved this monster.
I wish we could have a lawn suffering.
12 lives were cut short, 70 others wounded, and countless hearts broken. This was no ordinary crime. It was a meticulously planned massacre that would etch the name James Holmes into the annals of American criminal history. He was charged with 12 counts of first-degree murder, 140 counts of attempted first-degree murder, and 1 count of possessing an illegal explosive device.
If you are Stephen Barton, you deserve to hear that for your injuries, the defendant was sentenced to the maximum term of years for this case.
James Holmes, born on December 13, 1987 in San Diego, California, was a figure of contrasts. On paper, he was a brilliant student with an enviable academic record, a young man who excelled in the sciences. Holmes graduated with a bachelor's degree in neuroscience, a testament to his intellect. His journey continued as he was accepted into a prestigious PhD program in neuroscience at the University of Colorado.
I didn't realize that his loudest cry for help was his silence.
But beneath the surface of this academic prowess, there were turbulent undercurrents. Holmes's mental health was a growing concern. He sought help for his mental state, but rejected the treatment suggestions offered to him. Colleagues and professors noted a shift in his demeanor. The once promising student began to falter. His academic performance declined, and he eventually dropped out of the PhD program, just months before the Aurora Theater shooting.
I wanted a trial. I wanted to know everything that there was possible to know about what John's final minutes were.
In the lead-up to the fateful night, Holmes's behavior grew increasingly erratic. He made homicidal statements and exhibited signs of severe mental illness. Despite these warning signs, there was no intervention that could foresee or prevent the tragedy that was to unfold. The descent of James Holmes into the abyss of his own mind set the stage for one of the most chilling episodes in recent memory.
I want to make it clear that it is the court's intention that the defendant never set foot in free society again.
The tale of James Holmes is a chilling reminder of the fine line between genius and madness. A promising academic career in neuroscience, overshadowed by a descent into mental illness, set the stage for a night that would leave a scar on the city of Aurora. The meticulous planning, the calculated execution of a massacre, and the subsequent quest for justice have been etched into the annals of criminal history.
I would have been crawling on all fours to get to him. He's never said that he wanted to kill people.
In the wake of the Aurora Theater tragedy, the world witnessed the legal reckoning of James Holmes. A once promising neuroscience student, his academic aspirations were overshadowed by a descent into a troubled mental state. The courtroom became the final setting for Holmes's story, where the gravity of his actions was met with the full weight of justice.
I am 100% sure that these are just and fair.
His sentencing, a culmination of legal proceedings and psychiatric evaluations, resulted in 12 consecutive life sentences plus 3,318 years without parole.
Sheriff, get the defendant out of my courtroom, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
This conclusion serves as a stark testament to the severity of the crimes committed on that fateful summer night in 2012.
We do know one thing. He's going to die in prison. And for us, that's good enough.
The sooner, the better.
The next case is a bit more personal, as tensions in a relationship unfortunately culminated in the disappearance and dismemberment of Kajavia Globe by her own boyfriend. In the heart of Detroit, a story unfolded that gripped the city with a mix of sorrow and outrage. The case of Maxwell Brack, a name that became synonymous with a heinous act of violence, reached its conclusion in a courtroom where justice was demanded for the untimely demise of Kajavia Globe. As the gavel came down, the air was thick with the weight of the sentence.
He didn't deserve it. He didn't understand what he had. He wanted to bring her down instead of uplift her. He was no good to her. Do you understand?
The city of Detroit, known for its resilience and spirit, was shaken to its core when news broke of a crime that seemed to defy the very essence of humanity. Kajavia Globe, a young woman with a bright smile that could light up the darkest of rooms, became the center of a narrative that would leave an indelible mark on the community. It was a disappearance that sparked widespread concern.
And did they put it in front of their house or someone else's house? Across the street at a vacant house.
Kajavia, known for her reliability and close ties with her family, vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and a family fraught with worry. The search for Kajavia began immediately, with friends, family, and law enforcement combing the streets of Detroit, desperate for any sign of her whereabouts.
When her body was found on Fielding.
And that's when you put two and two together?
Yes.
Days passed with no word, no sighting, and the ominous feeling that something was wrong began to settle in. The investigation took a turn when a discovery was made. Kajavia's lifeless body was found, discarded like refuse behind a vacant house, her face cruelly concealed by a Halloween mask. The city reeled in horror at the brutality of the act, and a cry for justice rose from the community.
Yeah, he killed my baby, and she was so dumb. She loved this monster.
Maxwell Brack, Kajavia's ex-boyfriend, emerged.
That's usually how it goes. I've seen relationships where one was so abusive to the other, but the other stayed. Out of some misguided sense of loyalty. Because of love. You know, love makes us do extremely stupid things. You know. So, yeah.
Emerged as the prime suspect in this harrowing case. The evidence against him began to mount as investigators pieced together the puzzle of Kajavia's final days. Surveillance footage captured images that would become key exhibits in the case against Brack. The footage showed a figure, believed to be Brack, withdrawing money from Kajavia's bank account, using her car, and ultimately disposing of her body.
Inside the dumpster was the body of a black female. She appeared to have on a red or orange type sweater. Around her neck was a red or orange, different color red or orange rope, and she appeared to be nude from the waist down.
The narrative of the investigation was one of meticulous police work and unwavering determination. Detectives scoured through phone records, financial transactions, and witness statements, each piece of evidence drawing them closer to the truth. The community watched, holding its collective breath as the case against Brack solidified.
She was placed knees first into the bin.
The breakthrough came when forensic analysis confirmed the presence of Brack's DNA on the mask found with Kajavia's body. It was a damning piece of evidence that, when presented alongside the mountain of other incriminating details, painted a clear picture of guilt. Brack's arrest followed, bringing a somber sense of relief to those who had been following the case with bated breath.
We as a jury find him guilty of the lesser offense of second-degree murder.
As the trial loomed, the prosecution laid the bare facts of the case to present the story of Kajavia's last moments and to seek the justice that her family demanded. The narrative of Maxwell Brack's crime was a tale of a life cut tragically short, of a family's anguish and confrontation with the darkest aspects of human nature. The judge acknowledged the family's heartbreak and encouraged them to get help.
You'll never be the same, but try to minimize the hurt by getting the counseling.
The sentencing of Brack brought a chapter of sorrow to a close for the family of Kajavia Globe. For Detroit, a city all too familiar with hardship, it was a moment that underscored the community's resolve against violence. The 70-year sentence handed down to Brack offered closure to Kajavia's relatives, and it marked the tireless efforts of the justice system to ensure that even in the face of darkness, light prevails.
Oh, thank you, Jesus.
Watching a serial killer get sentenced in court is one of the most satisfying moments, but this Green River killer charged with 49 counts of first-degree murder met a controversial ending.
Like, how controversial?
Gary Leon Ridgway, known infamously as the Green River Killer. His capture and subsequent sentencing for the murder of 49 women marked a chilling chapter in American criminal history. Let's uncover the gripping courtroom scenes and the unprecedented life sentences that sealed the fate of the United States' second most prolific serial killer. He was charged with 49 counts of aggravated first-degree murder, among others.
1982 through August 11th, 1983, with premeditated intent to cause her death, I strangled Shonda L. Summers to death.
The hunt for the Green River Killer was a descent into a world of darkness and despair. As the body count rose, the Green River Task Force was assembled, a team of dedicated detectives and forensic experts determined to stop a relentless predator. For nearly 2 decades, the killer remained a phantom, eluding capture with a cunning that frustrated law enforcement and terrorized the community.
I picked her up, planning to kill her. After killing her, I left her body near the northern boundary of SeaTac Airport. Is that your statement?
Yes, it is.
Is it true?
Yes.
The pieces of the puzzle fell into place in 2001. Ridgway, who had been a suspect early on but evaded conviction due to lack of evidence, was arrested. The DNA evidence connected him to the victims, his saliva found on the bodies providing an irrefutable match. The once cold trail blazed hot as Ridgway was taken into custody, setting the stage for one of the most significant trials in history.
I wish for him to have a long, suffering, cruel death.
The saga of Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, culminates in a moment of profound gravity as justice is meted out in a courtroom filled with the palpable grief of the victims' families.
He's gonna go to hell, and that's where he belongs.
The sentencing of Ridgway was a landmark event, not only for the sheer number of life sentences he received, but for the closure it brought to a community that had been living in the shadow of a monster. 48 life sentences without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 10 years for each count of tampering with evidence. Ridgway's fate was sealed behind the impenetrable walls of a prison
years
cell.
on top of that.
Ridgway, how do you plead to the charge of aggravated murder in the first degree, as charged in count 1 for the death of Wendy Lee Caulfield?
Guilty.
This story, one of the most harrowing tales of serial murder in the United States, serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the depths of human depravity. Yet, it also stands as a testament to the relentless pursuit of justice and the advances in forensic science that brought a killer to account. Gary Ridgway's sentencing closed a chapter on a reign of terror and offered a measure of peace to the loved ones of the 49 women whose lives were so cruelly snatched away. The next case shook the entire foundation of the American justice system. A young black 12-year-old boy, Lionel Tate, was sentenced to life, and then a national uproar ensued, allowing the sentence to be revoked.
So what the hell did he do?
Incarceration for your natural life.
In the summer of 1999, a tragedy unfolded that would shock Florida and the American justice system. A young boy, Lionel Tate, merely 12 years old, found himself at the heart of a legal storm that would question the very essence of juvenile justice.
I don't even remember this case.
First-degree murder for the death of 6-year-old Tiffany Unick, Tate's sentence was nothing short of controversial, historic, and horrifying.
The now 14-year-old Lionel Tate was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
The nature of the crime, a brutal battering that claimed the life of a child, was as shocking as the punishment that followed. Lionel Tate became the youngest American ever sentenced to life without parole, a decision that ignited controversy. This is the story of that fateful decision, the outcry that ensued, and the reverberations felt across a nation grappling with the fate of its youngest and most vulnerable offenders.
Throwing him in jail for the rest of his life is not helping him. It's not helping society. It's certainly not helping, Tiffany Unick.
On the fateful day of July 28, 1999, Lionel Tate, a 12-year-old boy, was entrusted with the care of his 6-year-old cousin, Tiffany Unick, while his mother, Kathleen Grossett Tate, a Florida state trooper, was upstairs in their home. The two children were left to play, their laughter and footsteps a common soundtrack to a seemingly ordinary evening. But as the night progressed, the atmosphere within the Tate household shifted from carefree to catastrophic.
Tiffany died of multiple blunt traumatic injuries.
Tiffany was not breathing. Her small body bore the marks of a savage attack, with serious bruises covering her legs, feet, and neck. The force exerted upon her was likened to the impact of a speeding car. Her skull was fractured, her liver lacerated, a rib broken, and her brain swollen. Injuries so severe they were compared to a fall from a 3-story building.
We, the jury, find the defendant is guilty of murder in the first degree as charged in the indictment.
Convicted of first-degree murder for the death of 6-year-old Tiffany Unick, Tate's sentencing would ignite a firestorm of debate and controversy. As the youngest American ever sentenced to life without parole, a sentence that would later be overturned, the case of Lionel Tate raises profound questions about justice, childhood, and the very nature of punishment.
I realized that Tiffany Unick had justice, but I made no secret by the fact that I found life in prison with no parole inappropriate as a sentence.
The case eventually made its way to a federal appeal court, and the court handed down a new ruling. Tate's competency had not been evaluated prior to the trial, therefore he was granted a new trial. This new trial allowed him to take a plea deal which reduced his sentence to 3 years in prison, 1 year house arrest, and 10 years probation. 3 years in prison might seem like a relatively long time for the average citizen, but for school shooter Nicholas Cruz, 3 years is basically a minute for the controversial, lengthy sentence he received.
That asshole.
Today, the wrong verdict was given.
On a day shrouded in heartbreak, the corridors of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, became the stage for an unspeakable tragedy. Nicholas Cruz, a name now synonymous with one of the most harrowing chapters in American history, carried out an act of violence that saw the loss of 17 innocent lives, with 17 more wounded that would forever scar the fabric of a community.
Last week, I sat with you, attorney.
Said it before, I'll say it again, especially in this country. If you prioritize owning a tool over the lives of people that cannot defend themselves, if that is your priority, then by all rights and accounts could be seen as a sociopath. Because you'd rather have an inanimate object over somebody that could potentially lose their life because of said inanimate object.
He sat in his office. Watch the video of you. I'm glad I get to see your face right now. Of you killing my daughter for the very first time.
On that fateful Valentine's Day in Parkland, Florida, the community was reeling from the shock of a massacre that had unfolded within the walls of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. 17 lives were brutally cut short, and 17 others bore the physical and emotional scars of the rampage. The perpetrator, Nicholas Cruz, had vanished into the chaos of screaming students and wailing sirens, only to be apprehended later that day.
Pressing the barrel of his weapon to my daughter's chest.
The nation watched in horror as details emerged. Cruz had arrived at the school in an Uber, armed with an AR-15 rifle, and began firing into classrooms and hallways. After the shooting, he discarded his weapon and blended in with the crowd of terrified students, escaping the immediate lockdown.
And there are people that actually justify this asshole's behavior. There are people that say, oh yeah, well, you know, he's got his gun, he's good. No. No. I mean, okay. I have my misgivings about kids in general, but that is no excuse for me to pick up a weapon and go on a spree. Yeah, nah.
His freedom was short-lived, however, as law enforcement officials, acting on descriptions and surveillance footage, arrested him over an hour later.
There are, actually by a show of hands, anyone else in this room, because of him, gonna have to endure not watching people they love get married?
In the days that followed, the full weight of the law began to press down on Cruz. He faced 17 counts of premeditated murder and 17 counts of attempted murder. Throughout the trial, the nation bore witness to the complexities of the legal system, the heart-wrenching impact on the victims' families, and the debates that ignited over gun control and school safety.
The only comfort I have is that your life in prison will be filled with horror and fear. So my hope for you is that you die sooner rather than later. I have no forgiveness in my heart for you. You are a monster with no remorse, and every breath you take is a breath wasted.
The arraignment brought no plea from Cruz, prompting the judge to enter a plea of not guilty on his behalf. It was a procedural step, but one that resonated with the watching world, a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming evidence, the wheels of justice would turn with due process. Cruz had some final words to say to the judge and the courthouse. Let's have a listen.
I am very sorry for what I did, and I have to live with it every day. And that if I were to get...
Fuck off with that shit.
Get a second chance, I will do everything in my power to try to help others. And I am doing this for you, and I do not care if you do not believe me. And I love you, and I know you don't believe me, but I have to live with this every day.
Of course we don't fucking believe you. A better course of action would be to just say, you know what? I fucked up, put me away. That's it.
And brings me nightmares.
The stage was set for one of
brings
the
you
most
nightmares.
closely watched trials
Yeah.
in recent history. A trial that would delve into the darkest corners of human behavior and seek to deliver justice for the victims and their families. He was sentenced to 34 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. Many of the victims' relatives were dissatisfied as they wanted the death penalty.
If not now the death penalty, then when? When?
The next case was deemed controversial because the defendant, Jennifer Mee, allegedly had a minor role in the crime, but she was still made to do the time. In a Florida courtroom charged with tension, Jennifer Mee, once known as the Hiccup Girl, faced the ultimate reckoning for her role in a crime that gripped the nation. Mee, who had risen to fleeting fame for an uncontrollable hiccuping condition, now stood in stark contrast to her former image, as the gravity of the court's decision loomed over her for her first-degree murder. 19-year-old Jennifer Mee found herself embroiled in a plot that bore no resemblance to her innocent claim to fame. Alongside two accomplices, Lauren Rayford and Lamont Newton, Mee lured 22-year-old Shannon Griffin, whom she had met on a social networking site, with the pretense of a date. The encounter, however, was a ruse for a robbery that would end in tragedy.
She left the apartment first and then called the boys, Lamont and Lauren, and they left after getting the phone call from her.
On a fateful October evening, Griffin, a Walmart worker, was led to a vacant home in St. Petersburg. It was there that the robbery attempt escalated, and Griffin was shot 4 times, a victim of a crime that shocked the community and those who had followed Mee's story from its quirky beginnings. The aftermath of the shooting saw Mee and her accomplices arrested and charged with first-degree murder.
He was going to go on a date. He just thought he was going on a date. Just a young college-age kid grinning ear to ear, about to go on a date, just happy as could be.
Under Florida's stringent felony murder rule, Mee faced the same charges as the shooter, despite not having pulled the trigger herself. The law states that anyone involved in committing a felony where a death occurs can be charged with murder in the first degree, a statute that would prove pivotal in Mee's case.
We're here today and this week because Jennifer Mee set everything up.
The prosecution's case was built on the premise that Mee was a key conspirator in the robbery that led to Shannon Griffin's death. They argued that her actions were calculated and that she had used her internet persona to lure Griffin into the trap that would ultimately cost him his life. The defense had other things to say about that.
We know that Miss Mee, as the parents testified, has a history of being someone who can be manipulated.
The state, however, presented evidence that Mee had communicated with Griffin and had been integral in orchestrating the meeting that night. They underscored the fact that, under the law, her involvement in the robbery made her equally culpable for the murder, regardless of who fired the shots.
She was extremely disturbed, like she was out of breath. You could tell she had been running and she was just like in a panic state.
After days of intense arguments and emotional testimonies, the case was handed over to the jury. The jury's decision would come after just 4 hours of deliberation, a relatively
4
short
hours?
period given the gravity of the case. Their verdict would not only seal Jennifer Mee's fate, but also reflect the jury's interpretation of the law and the evidence presented to them.
And it only took 4 hours?
Defendant in this case, defendant is guilty of murder in the first degree as charged. So say we all.
Jennifer Mee was found guilty of first-degree murder and was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The decision was a devastating blow to Mee and her family, and a resolution for the family of Shannon Griffin, who had been seeking justice for their lost loved one.
It's been a long journey. It's been almost 3 years. It's been a struggle, and we're just really grateful to
the state for pushing this through.
If you have never seen or heard of somebody getting thousands of years in prison, you have to pay close attention to the next case of Michael Devlin, charged with producing child pornography.
Ooh.
In the expanse of Missouri, a plot unraveled that would shake the very...
Okay, this was one of those cases where it caught so much attention nationwide, and then at the resolution of it, it faded into obscurity. Like, yeah.
Core of any parent's nightmare. Michael John Devlin was charged with the abduction of 13-year-old Ben Ownby and Sean Hornbeck, who had been missing for over 4 years. The discovery of these two young boys in Devlin's apartment catapulted the case into the national spotlight, leading to a labyrinth of charges that would culminate in an unprecedented sentence.
Is what the prosecuting attorney said with respect to that charge substantially true and correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
On January 12, 2007, when the abduction of 13-year-old Ben Ownby led authorities to Devlin's doorstep. Ben had vanished 4 days prior, and the search for him was frantic and fraught with anxiety. The breakthrough came when law enforcement officials noticed a white pickup truck, matching the description of a vehicle seen near Ben's abduction site, parked outside Devlin's apartment complex.
Devlin pled guilty for one reason, and that was so that the entire world wouldn't know the full extent of the atrocities that he committed on these boys.
Inside that apartment, the unimaginable was revealed. Not only was Ben Ownby found, but so was Sean Hornbeck, a boy who had been missing since October 6, 2002. Sean had been 11 years old when he disappeared while riding his bike to a friend's house in Richwoods, Missouri. For 4 years, 3 months, and 6 days, Sean's whereabouts remained a mystery, his absence a gaping wound in his family's life.
I got a very good look at his face, and I will never forget that ugly face of his.
Devlin had presented Sean as his son, a lie that went unquestioned as the years passed. The discovery of the two boys, alive yet irreparably changed, sent shockwaves through the community and the nation. The Sean Hornbeck Foundation and Search and Rescue Team, established during the search for Sean, had finally seen their mission come to a close, though not in the way they had hoped.
Over 4 years of bones broken and forced to heal on their own, of ribs broken but never cared for. On January 12th, we brought home the scared shell of our 11-year-old boy, wrapped in the body of a 15-year-old.
The boys' return to their families marked the end of their captivity, but the beginning of a legal battle. As the case unfolded, a task force comprising prosecutors and investigators from Washington, Franklin, St. Louis, and Lincoln counties, along with the FBI, the Missouri State Highway Patrol, and local police departments, was formed to delve into Devlin's past and any potential involvement in other unsolved cases.
Very well, Mr. Devlin. How do you plead to the charges against you?
Guilty.
Devlin's fate was sealed as he faced the full force of the law, resulting in 74 life sentences, a testament to the severity of his actions. This case stands as a chilling reminder of the darkness that can hide in plain sight and the enduring strength of the human spirit to overcome unimaginable adversity.
The only thing I will say, Mr. Devlin, is that you heaped unimaginable heartache on a lot of people in this case. You will have plenty of time to think about this while you spend the rest of your life in the penitentiary.
If you enjoyed this video, check out our other awesome courtroom videos on the channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
4,500 years. And I will say this. There are two types of inmates that get automatically green lit in general population. First is cops. Second is diddlers of children. So it's only a matter of time before somebody takes them out. Whew. Yeesh. That's a great way to start this week.